What is up, everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Camera Junkie live stream. My name's Luis, also known as Mr. Camera Junkie, where I remind you to upgrade your skills before your gear. And I'm still finishing up a couple of things because Aiden had me on some extended dad duties right before I went online. But we made it, we're here, and episode 187 has commenced. Now, if it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Luis, and please be sure to introduce yourself so you can make yourself acquainted with the Camera Junkie crew that hangs out in the chat. And as tradition goes around here, first thing that I do is always go to check out who is in chat hanging out with us first, right off of the bat. And what I see here is I see Ernesto hanging out. Let's see. Saying, hey, Luis, enjoying fajitas and a Coke Zero on the rocks. Nice. Man, I haven't had a Coca-Cola, any type of soft drink, to be in general, like a Coca-Cola, a Pepsi, a Sprite, or anything in so many years. It's pretty interesting. When I go out to restaurants, I usually get a water because that's part of what I drink. And the only soft drink, the only carbonated beverage that I consume, unfortunately, is the Monster. So even though I know it's not the best, it tastes the best to me. And that's why I was able to basically quit on all other soft drinks. And this is the only thing that I have of choice. Now, I don't drink it for energy. I don't think it works in that capacity, right? It works as good as a cup of coffee with caffeine. But once again, not the reason why I drink it. All right, and we also have Gretchen in the house saying happy Saturday to the MCJ crew. Hi to me, myself, and to Aiden. Now, speaking of that, this live stream is being brought to you by MMI, right? Or no. Yeah, MMI, me, myself, and I. Some of you guys might get that. It's been a long time. But another announcement is that we will be missing Mr. Paul Duncan, the moderator, in the chat for today because he's hanging out and he let me know. And I was like, that's super cool. So he's out on the town and we wish him all the best and have the most fun. And we got Sammy Superstar sneaking in here saying hello to everyone. How you doing, sir? As always, thank you for hanging out here with me. And Prince Aiden. Now, what are we talking about today? We're talking about Podcast Summit being held in Atlanta over the holiday weekend, which is going to be on the 4th and the 5th of July. And my preparations on what I'm doing to get my behind, including Aiden, up to Atlanta. Now, there's certain things that I do when I prepare for my trip to, say, Creator Camp, that for the last couple of years I've had the privilege of hanging out in Amesbury, Massachusetts during the month of October, and I'm looking forward to doing the same once again this year. But in those cases, I rent a car, right? Last year I rented a minivan, which was just phenomenal. Totally changed my entire views on minivans, and I hold them to high esteem, right, when it comes to the automotive universe, for the creature comforts and the conveniences that they provide, especially when you're hanging out with a little guy like Aiden, right? So somebody says, going to another summit conference. Yes, this one is actually being held by David Shands. Now he's the producer and host of the, I know him on Instagram as the Suckers, Sleep is for Suckers, but it's I'm running a blank right now, but he's actually the host of the podcast summit, which is a huge event that he decided to create, I believe, last year, the year before. And it was originally held in Miami before I was made aware of it. But someone who's part of it is Marshall Fox from Marshall Creates on the Ecamm channel, but also, you know, he's a renowned artist when it comes to logos and branding and all that stuff. He's got a quite an extensive portfolio of high-end clientele that, you know, through word of mouth constantly keep referring him business. I got Aiden trying to take my attention right now. What's up, buddy? This is what I'm saying. Aiden's been wanting a lot of extra attention today. Aiden, he just wants to play. He just wants to play. Stop poking my eyes, man. Come on, you're gonna go over here. You are a mess. I gotta clean you up. Yeah, I gotta definitely, you know, give him his bath, and he's just been on a tear today. He didn't. I'm doing it, buddy. I'm doing a live stream. I'm doing a live stream. Come on, let me finish. Everybody. Well, like I was saying before, Mr. Moderator chimed in. It's like you summoned him, Gretchen, but this is hanging low. And I'm running a little hot because, as you can see, my 50-pound kettlebells got me working out tonight. But let me see if I can just rock that a bit up there. Looks a little bit better with my head space. Okay, we march on. When I head to Creator Camp, it's a lot easier for me when I rent a vehicle. But because I'm driving my car, there's certain things that I have to take care of as part of the preparation. So one of the things that I did was I actually bought a serpentine belt, which is the belt that basically controls all of like the water pump, electronics, and everything on my vehicle or for my vehicle that I'm gonna have in my trunk space, basically, in case something were to happen. That's something that I would be able to replace myself if it were to go defective. But at the same time, I have to go take my car to get an oil change just to make sure that it's at tip-top shape and give it the whole like once over as far as like a tune-up. Now, as of recently, I've been doing all the modifications or the upgrades myself, from like the ignition coils, the spark plugs, basically doing the entire tune-up. But the one thing that is missing is the alignment. It's not that it's misaligned, it's aligned correctly. The only thing is that it's misaligned with the steering wheel, and my OCD is one of those things that is just like, I have a steering wheel that has a little red notch dead center, right, of the steering wheel, so you could always know where that position is. It's more of a cover that I put on my steering wheel, and it's just rocked a little bit off to the side. And as I drive, I'm going straight and the car drives perfect, but that little red line is just like, you know, 11:55 instead of midnight. And so that I want to take care of that, and because I don't drive my car that much, maybe once or twice a week, is why I just don't really worry about it. But now that I'm going to be taking this long extended trip, I want to make sure that I have the oil change and that I get the alignment done. So those are two things that I need to do as far as preparation for this trip. The other thing is that I need to prep, you know, suitcases. Now when I go to Amesbury, it's a much longer trip, including the stay and the travel up and travel down. Basically, I'm only doing a day's worth of travel up and down. So from Miami to Atlanta, it's gonna take me less than 12 hours of total drive time. And because of it, I don't really need to kind of pack for the day of driving. So I'm planning to go in shorts and flip flops and things like that so that I can take the drive as most comfortable as possible. And then once I get to the hotel, be able to, like actually change into, more appropriate clothing. So that's my thought in that aspect. So those are less things that I have to pack for. And what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to carry one suitcase for both me and Aiden, because it's going to have plenty of space, and I have plenty of space for all of my extra things. Now, I have this little stroller for Aiden that really helps me out when it comes to like moving around and heading into restaurants, things like that, because it's very compact. It keeps him basically upright. It's seating height for most tables at restaurants, and it also like the handle that actually allows me to push him down, it's a singular, or a mono point, so to speak. So it allows me to push him along with just one hand and actually bring it down, so that once we're at restaurants, it doesn't like stick out and extend into like the walkways or into the paths, and you could just like shrink it down so that it's just like a basic little seat for Aiden. The one thing is that for an all-day use, as far as what we're going to be doing, is not the most ideal thing. So I started researching on new carriers for Aiden, right? A new way to kind of bring him along. And what I started realizing was that I already had what I kind of was looking for. Now, for Podfest that happened in Orlando at the beginning of the year, I purchased a cart, and it's to lug all my gear around. And it was because we were carrying a lot of gear, light stands, cameras, full audio systems, cables, cameras, like everything. And what I ended up doing was throwing everything that the cart was designed to carry, and I built it all out on the cart, so that whenever we needed to move locations, instead of breaking down and resetting up, all I would do is just grab the cart and take it with me. And that worked phenomenal, and I absolutely love the cart. Why I mentioned that is because everything that I was seeing as far as like little people carriers for Aiden, and something that will give him a little bit more space than the cart that I have him utilizing now, is the fact that it was basically that cart with a little cover designed for children. So I was like, let me just pull that out of the closet, and I'm testing it out. And now Aiden is going to be hanging out in the cart with all of those toys, which is going to allow me to move him around that the Podfest Summit a lot easier, right? Instead of having to worry about two things, I'm going to be able to just carry my bag with the necessities that I'm really trying to be a lot more minimal for this trip, and just carry that into one bag. That one bag also is going to have space for me to carry all of Aiden's extra things, right? Like his like snacks, meals, and things like that. So I'm consolidating all of that into one bag so that I don't have to carry multiple. And that's what I'm testing out right here. And basically it's going to be him inside of the, I guess, gear cart, but now it's going to be converted for Aiden's just hangout area, so that, let's say he's playing on the iPad or with some of his toys within the cart, I can basically like confine him to that small area. And if we need to move, less things that I need to pick up for Aiden, and just like leave it in there and we're just rolling, which is the ideal. Now it's going to be a great test to put this theory into use, but we'll see exactly how it's going to work out. I think it's going to be for the better, especially that what I saw online, that's exactly what was being offered as far as the next level up for little people carriers, right? So now that's the plan. The other thing that I'm going to mention is that next Saturday, I'm still going to be in Atlanta. So what's gonna happen? Well, you know that I never miss a live stream, even if I'm on the road. So I'm going to be doing the live stream once again from Atlanta. I'm gonna be hanging out in the hotel, and I check out on Sunday for this precise reason. So I'm going to be hanging out and setting up everything from the hotel in Atlanta for next Saturday's live stream. So just giving you guys the heads up as far as like how do they always say, like cleaning house, like when you're just giving some information. So okay, we have Kevin in the house saying hello to everyone. How you doing, bro? Yes, and has everyone remembered to hit that like button? Thank you so very much, Kevin. I always forget to ask that all the time. Sly says, always check your timing belt before a road trip. Timing belt snaps, you're done. Absolutely. But luckily, I have a nice 2ZFE engine from Toyota that carries dual timing chains, and they are still good for, I believe, another 150,000 miles before those would need to be replaced. On top of that, I well maintain my engine, so no timing belt, but timing chains. They're still within their life cycle, and yeah, the oil changes be the only thing. Oh, we also got Parker sneaking in. How you doing, bro? Thanks for hanging out. But yes, you're absolutely right. If that is something that is necessary on your vehicle, like if you do have a timing chain, just make sure you service it correctly within the appropriate time, because it's not always that it snaps. That could be a problem. If the belt just stretches a little bit, right, and it skips a tooth, your engine could be in a whole nother world of hurt when the timing is off by that much of that many degrees, right? You could really put a hurting on it. But like we can diverge into car lore and engine stuff, because I absolutely love it. You guys know that, but not trying to squirrel myself into that category as of right now. So let's try to keep it on the tracks. So right now I'm really excited because, first of all, I'm going to be hanging out with Doc Rock, Caleb, and a lot of the Ecamm fam, and a lot of people like we mentioned last week, and I say we because Paul corrected me, but that there are going to be 20 like little bubble pods where you're going to have a setup of a computer with Ecamm and everything, and you'll have the ability to like record, do a podcast, go live, everything right there. So I know there's going to be like a whole ton of people that are going to both need my assistance, but also going to be able to network with, as far as being able to help them past Podfest, like when it comes to maybe gaining a couple of higher end clients in remote productions and things like that, similar to the work that I do for Ecamm, would be ideal, right? Because that will only make things better and easier, and also just expand upon that. But I'm really excited because there's going to be hella networking happening in Atlanta. So that, on top of, like I said, hanging out with the Ecamm fam, is just gonna be a lot of fun. And I'm also gonna be hanging out with a good friend of mine, Aubrey, which she's a Creator Camp member, but also a member of like Doc Rock's Gold group, and she lives in Atlanta, and she's always talking about these delicious peach milkshakes that are made in her area. So I'm super excited to get my hands on some peach milkshakes with Aubrey. So like pretty much the whole next week is planned out. I also have friends in Orlando, which I'm coordinating with to see if I'm gonna like catch up with them on the way up to Atlanta or back on the way down when I start driving on Sunday. So there's a lot of different nuances, but it's part of doing what I love to do. So this is where I'm just like super excited for, like this opportunity. This is it, because everything is an opportunity, right? Some people look at things pessimistic, and I look at them optimistic. I always remind myself that I get to do this, right? And that's why I'm always adamant about thanking all of the Camera Junkie crew for hanging out with me every week. It's something that I would be doing because I love it anyways, but the fact to have such an amazing community back me up and then be here with me every week, it just makes it absolutely the best. And the community, what we're building here together, all of us, is just second to none. So I'm very grateful that I get to do this and do all of these things, and it's not lost on me that I get to hang out with my son every single day while I do this, right? There's so many times where I just stop what I'm doing and I'm tickling and I'm hanging out, like you saw a little bit earlier in the stream, with my baby boy, and there's like no other place that I would rather be. So I'm extremely grateful, and I thank all of the Camera Junkie crew for allowing me to do something that I love while I am still able to take care of my boy. Now, there's still a lot of things that need to be done for his future and my own, which is what is exciting to me about all the possibilities. But you guys, like, this is the genesis, right? Another note, for all of us, we're about to hit 2,000 subscribers, so we just passed 1,900 and less than 100 new subscribers till we get my 2K play pillow, and we're gonna be adding it to some part of this background over here, right? So my official 2K play pillow before I get any of my buttons. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. Let's go back to the chat. Oh, I'm gonna skip this song. I like it, but too many words in it. Sounds like some reggaeton stuff. Here we go. Oh, Ravens Talk with Yolanda. How you doing, Yolanda? Saying hello to everyone. We got Jim in the house. Saying hi, Luis. Happy Saturday. Jim, you messaged me from another account, right? I believe so. Okay, so now I know, because when I saw the other name and I believe I responded to the message, it said something different, and I was gonna ask, did you change your branding? But glad to see that it's a secondary account. Super cool, and always a pleasure to see you here. Sammy saying very nice. He also has a question saying, what gear will you be bringing onto the trip? That is a really cool question, because I'm going very minimalistic, as minimalistic as you can with an FX30. Right? So this is the non-minimalistic aspect of my trip, but this is going to be the only camera that I am going to carry. So I'm gonna have 3 batteries for the FX30. I'm gonna only carry the FX30, and let me make sure that I'm correcting myself. Yes. Now this one also has the ability to do connection or webcam via HDMI, just like my ZV-1F, but with a high data cable. This one will actually connect 80 high definition, so I'll be able to get a full HD read out of this camera while connected via the HDMI for Saturday's live stream. So the microphones that I'm going to carry for the setup, excuse me, is my Rode Wireless Go microphone setup, right? So I'm going to be carrying my little box here with the 2 extra microphones, one that I have it set up like such. Oh, that came into the picture. Good thing that I had my metal case on it, but this right here. So I'm just gonna have it as an interview setup like such, and I'm just gonna be rocking it out that way. Or I might just do the lanyard where I just put it over my neck and have it hanging. It depends on how I feel, but this is basically gonna be the setup with, what did I do? Oh, I got it over there. My MacBook Air M1. So just my standard MacBook Air M1. That's gonna be my computer machine. My one camera, this one, because I'm not really being tasked to record anything, so this is just supplementary. I'm gonna carry this to make it more minimalistic. Maybe, right? That's gonna be more convenient, and I think that would just allow me to carry less stuff. I was thinking about carrying the handle to make it convenient, but I'm not going to be using this camera in that aspect. If anything, it will probably be propped up as a on a tripod more than anything for the live stream, and then everything else is going to be done handheld, recording slow motion. If not, it's going to be like an interview mode, right? Or a vlog aspect. I'll be able to do all of it with this one camera. camera, and it's going to give me the best quality that I could imagine. Everything's going to be recorded in log 10-bit. Now, I hesitated before when you had first asked, because I was thinking about bringing my X360 maybe, but this could just be an extra bit of work for footage that I'm not really going to utilize in this scenario. So I really do think that my Insta360 X3 is going to stay along here with the rest of my stuff. Like, everything here is staying, and the one thing that I'm actually on my way to pick up is the latest addition to my setup. So let me go here, and this guy is going to be replaced just to make a little bit more room. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to illustrate it here. Well, I'm not even going to pull on it, but when I redid my cable setup, I kind of consolidated a lot of things, and I'm really only using 2 of the sliders for microphones, and one of them is wireless. So because of that, I'm going to pick up the Rodecaster Duo. So I'm picking up the smaller unit of the Rodecaster Pro series, and I'm going to basically interchange my Rodecaster Pro to save some space and have the Rodecaster Duo. So I'm excited to get my hands on that. I'll be coming from Atlanta with that bit of new gear. So that's basically also going to be my interface, and I'm going to test it out. That's also why I'm taking these to basically connect my wireless setup the way that I have it here on the Rodecaster Pro 2 onto the Rodecaster Duo and mess around with that for the live stream. So I gave out the secret sauce that next week I'm just going to be messing around with the Rodecaster Duo. So I'm just going to be bringing like an extra microphone and a cable for like the podcasting aspect, right? But mostly for the testing of the Rodecaster Duo so that I can mess around with it while I'm there. I'm going to have my MacBook Air M1, Rodecaster, no, not Rodecaster, the Rode Wireless Goes. These aren't the Pro, these are the Rode Wireless Go 2s, right? That whole setup, the Rodecaster Pro Duo, and my FX30, and that's what I'm gonna be rocking. So that's it as far as gear goes. But I am gonna carry, like, I'm gonna try to not carry, better said that, I'm gonna try to not carry my complete arsenal of lenses, but they're kind of already so well fit into that bag that it's just easier to just throw it in there as long as all of Aiden's stuff fits on the top end. So if that's a go, then that might just be the easiest thing, because it's one less thing to pack or have to worry about, because that was already set up. I have 2 camera bags, one that's set up with all of my full frame glass, and the other one set up with all of my APS-C glass, so that depending on what I'm going to be doing, I know which one I'm gonna grab. Right, if I am going to be doing photography with my full frame camera, which is actually what we're using right now to record this video, and like I said, I'm not taking it down, so it's all staying here, then that would be the situation where I would carry the full frame lenses, because they're heavier, they're bigger, but they're also as versatile, because if I were to carry a companion APS-C camera, they would be able to use them just the same. But because I'm not doing that, I am going to take advantage of carrying the lighter set of lenses, right? The ones that are much smaller, much lighter, and rock those for the appropriate APS-C camera. Yep, and that if I'm not missing anything, I think that's all I'm gonna carry. And as of right now, that's all that I have, like, in my mental prowess, so to speak. That's all I would need to bring. You know, there might be something I'll be like, oh, I forgot that I need this one thing. So, you know, that would be a mulligan if I did forget something in that sort. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. So true, so true. One of those classic lines of a movie. The FX30 is the only camera you need on the trip. Absolutely, that's it. Like, it's outperforming everything. I have been messing around with this guy. So the R10. Now this one is mostly for photography. Like you can use it for video. It is possible, but I would mostly say that this would be really how could I say, pre-planned, right? So you would have to really think out all of your shots, what you're gonna say, what are your topics and things like that, to utilize a camera like the R10 for video and content creation. So like you would have to like write out bullet points. You can't go off the fly. For live streaming, would not recommend. And long-term recording like that, just like webinar style, anything that's longer than 30 to 40 minutes, do not recommend this at all for video. Now the features that they has for photography are really, really cool, especially the ones when it comes to manual focus, right? There's just a certain je ne sais quoi, but there's certain features that bring back the old school, and I really mean the old school aesthetics of film photography, right? When you go into utilizing like an actual manual lens, and how the digital system doesn't really care because it's not working in coordinates, so to speak, with the lens to make sure that it's recognizing the image. Is just whatever the sensor whatever information the sensor is reading, is going to utilize it to its best information, and the sensor itself is what's kind of like recognizing the focus. And it's really cool because it gives you a digital indicator on the top end of what you're focusing on, to let you know what you are doing is in focus and or not, as far as the sensor readout. So it's pretty interesting that I was able to Frankenstein a lens onto this. So what I did was I put the Canon RF to EF adapter. So I basically created an EF camera. Then I was able to utilize the EF to Nikon adapter. So then it created that adapter to a Nikon lens mount. And then I took my now it would be my 70-year-old Fuji 50 millimeter. No, Fuji, listen to me. I got so many lenses. I do have a Fuji 15, but my Nikkor, this guy right here, let me pull him out. Nikkor 50 millimeter f 1.8, is it? No, this is a 1.4. And this is an amazing lens. This is 70 years old, old film, and I really mean film photography. That the back end, right here, let me give you the overhead shot. You can see the clarity on, like, it will focus on the keyboard through. But what I want to show is that it has no electronics output. It is just glass. So being able to take this, put it on a Nikon adapter that was made for Nikon to EF, and then take the EF adapter to RF to the camera mount, and I like tripled up on the adapters and was able to throw a 70-year-old plus Nikon Nikkor lens straight from Japan onto basically a dummy adapter, onto an EF mount to RF adapter, and get this camera to focus it with digital indicators. Pretty cool. But I've been testing this camera out so that I can make some content on it. That is most likely going to be coming out next month, because obviously I'm starting off July in Atlanta, right? So I'll be back on the 8th or something like that. That's when I start driving back. So that's what I'm planning to take, and that's what I'm gonna deal with. And like I mentioned, if I were to add something like this to like the workflow, it's only gonna make it more difficult for me, especially when I'm not the one covering the event. This is just going to make it a little bit too difficult for me because it gets a lot of great footage, but to make it useful, unless you have memory cards for every single day, you're going to spend a long time offloading the data at the end of each day, just so that you can have that backed up so that you can clear the memory card and record for the next. So I know it's just 2 days, but you know, the other thing is going through 13 hours of footage to find the clip that you want. Now, it's not that bad, and I preface this with the fact that the Insta360 series, they record in 30-minute increments, right? So you'd be able to just chunk it out, and you kind of can narrow it down to which half an hour your data is in, and then only have to scan 30 minutes of that data to find what you're looking for. So it's not the end of the world, but another piece of workflow that I think I'm just gonna leave home for this event. Let's see where we're at. Says it's bizarre, gotta figure it out. Jim Out Loud is my brand, but it does not show up in the way live chats, but it does in comments. Okay, so that is weird, and I read that like a complete robot. Like it's just weird. There was something that popped up. Okay, so let's try it again in a more natural flow. It goes, it's bizarre, gotta figure it out. Jim Out Loud is my brand, but it does not show up that way in lives, in chats, and it does in comments. So that's very interesting. So it is still one account, but good to know. Good to know. Well, you see, then that's another tip. And just to let everyone know, if you have an avatar, right, like a brand, right, like I'm gonna bring Jim's comment back up onto the screen. This little picture of Jim right here, boop, right, that is the same exact picture that comes out in the other one, and because of it, I was able to recognize it right away. I've dealt with a lot of content creators that decide to put a different type of avatar on their Instagram and on their TikTok pages and things like that, and I highly recommend that you keep it uniform all together, because it really throws a monkey wrench in the situation. Like, I thought he had a completely different channel and it was just like a branding thing, and it's because I recognized his icon before his name, right? He could have changed his name to whatever, right? It could have said whatever, but I already recognized his avatar and I would have known that it would be Jim. Hey, K-Wall's in the house. Kathy, thank you for hanging out. How are you doing today? Sammy's got another question. Do you know if there's an adapter that does from Sony E mount to Canon EF mount? Yes. Yeah, that's the one that I have. Actually, that's the one that I'm using right here. It's a Metabones. So let's go to the behind the scenes cam. Boop. And that's exactly what's right here. So this lens right here is my Quanta-Ray 19-35. It is a Canon EF film lens. So I have this all set up. I have it in manual, and that's one thing that I enjoy, is that I haven't really had to worry about focus hunting, right? The focus jumping back and forth, because it's set manual and it's not moving unless I move it. But in between there, I have an adapter, which is a Metabones, that's adapting the Canon or the Sony E mount to Canon EF, and that's all that is done there. One of the coolest things about this mount is one of my favorite, like I would say, like, secrets, right? Like this is one of my secret weapons. That's how I say, like, the secret weapon, what nobody knows. I have a really old film lens that's Canon EF mount, but this was before they had ever made, excuse me, this is before Canon had ever made any DSLR. Now, DSLR is a digital single lens reflex camera, right? Digital meaning there was no film and there was a sensor that will now capture the light and give to you your image. But prior to that, right, the previous iterations, they were still digital electronically powered cameras, but they were still using film stock to record the image. So they were using motors to spin the film faster, right? To cycle it faster so that you can get, you know, like 15 shots per second, right? And a roll of film would have like 36 exposure, so you basically had like 2 seconds of burst shooting before you had to change the film stock. And you had a variety of digital lenses that were using electronic autofocus to keep all of this, you know, information in frame, keep it in focus. And they were also using electronic contacts to power the lenses and the focus motors to keep everything intact. Why do I nerd out so much on this? Is to explain that those cameras never had a way to export what we consider EXIF data. So now if we were to take any digital photo, because we've been doing it for so long, once you import that image into like your culling software, right, whatever it may be, Lightroom or however it is that you organize your photos, you'd be able to look up the information, and it's going to give you the ISO that the camera was on, the focal length, what distance you were at, like all the information that you wouldn't have in film. Right? With film, there was no way to transfer all that digital information onto the actual film stock. Once we're on memory cards, all of that information gets tied together and it's all wrapped up in a neat little bow called the JPEG, right? So that is the best way to explain it. So the problem is that none of those lenses, none of them can be used on Canon's actual DSLR cameras because they do not transfer EXIF data that the Canon cameras require. So it required a lot of the Canon shooters that were going from film to digital to completely abandon all of this glass, all of these lenses, and start using the new digital lenses designed for DSLRs that would actually capture all that information. So whenever I would take this beautiful lens that I have, this 135 to 400 millimeter Canon EF film lens, and put it on any of the Canon DSLR cameras, they would actually shut down. They'll be like, cannot communicate, cannot touch it, cannot use it, error, 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 error. So I bought this lens for, I believe, $20 because nobody could use it. I picked it up years ago for $20, and I tried to see if there was something that I can do to kind of like bring it up to date, but I never really invested any time into doing so. What happens? That I ended up switching completely over, and once again, this little culprit, the meta bones, is what allowed me to do so. Because once I got that Metabones adapter, I now had all of this great Canon glass available for my Sony cameras, and that's what made the difference in my image. So I was like, wow, glass before ass. You know, optics are really more important than the camera bodies, and that's why Canon persisted to be on top of the like camera world, because they had at the time like the most clinically clean or precise, best looking, sharpest image glass that you can get on it. And because of this adapter, I was able to convert all of my lenses over to Sony systems and utilize them that way until I was able to find an equivalent or something better to replace it outright. So my 50 millimeter f1.4 that I love from Canon, that I actually have right over here. Yep. The ultrasonic, boop, right? Canon 50 millimeter EF. Like, this lens is amazing. It just is. If you own it, you know what I'm talking about. That's why out of all of the Canon lenses that I had, this is the only one. Well, these two were the only ones that I kept, and the 135 to 400 never worked on my DSLR cameras. But this is the saving grace, Sammy. This is the saving grace. Once I took that lens that was made for film and attached it to my Metabones adapter, the Metabones adapter was able to communicate all of the information that the lens naturally could not communicate to its own Canon cameras, but it was able to communicate that through the metabones as like a translator and get that information into every single shot. So once I kind of converted my Sony camera into the Canon EF with the adapter, I was then able to use that lens to its fullest, and autofocus worked. Like, it powered it up completely, and every time I took a shot on the Sony and I brought all my images into Lightroom, it had all of the information letting me know the focal length, the aperture, the shutter speed, everything that I wanted out of that lens. And it basically converted it from the film era to the DSLR or to the digital era. And once I had that, I started utilizing that lens with my A6000, and it was just like a match made in heaven. Every photo that I take with that lens, people just look at me. It's got almost like an anamorphic feel to it, right? So people always comment that it's like, it looks like it came out of a movie, right? Like it's a still shot out of a movie projector or something like that. So that's the kind of aesthetic that lens gives me. Now, to finish it off, my Zeiss 55mm f1.8 actually has won my heart over this 50mm from Canon, and it's why I don't utilize it as much. The Zeiss 55 f1.8, even though you're losing like a stop of light, is to me the sharpest lens that you can find, especially at f1.8. Like, you just rock it wide open and it's just gonna give you creamy, buttery bokeh with amazing sharpness and a warmth to the shots that are very similar to what I would get from Canon glass. Like, to me, the Zeiss coatings is the closest that you can get to what you get from Canon L lenses and ultrasonic series. So for that reason, I've also been a huge fan of the Zeiss line, and a couple of my favorite lenses now are Zeiss for the Sony E-mounts, and we keep rolling. So that breaks everything down as far as that goes. Thank you for the question, allowed me to just rant. When you get the V mount, you'll never need a Sony batteries again. El Chico XL, what's your thought on the Sony A7R5? Oh, okay. Well, this says El Chino. Sorry, I saw Chico. El Chino XL. Well, El Chino, my thoughts on the A7R4 is that is most likely the next R series camera that I will be purchasing. I actually am using an A7R2 right now, and this is what you're looking at right now, the image, and it is a 42.2 megapixel. Now, I know they came out with the 62 megapixel after this one, which is the Model 3, but was still using the NPF 50 batteries, which is the ones that I'm using here. I believe the difference between the version 3 and the 4 was that the 4 basically just converted it to the Z mount battery, which is where it should have happened in the version 3. But now the version 4 or the version 5 is just everything that I wanted and then some. And this is why I mention it. Even though I absolutely love the FX30, right? If there was one thing, the one negative that I would say out of this camera, and is just for me, is this right here. Is the flip out screen. Beautiful, great, fragile, right? Every time this thing is out, it's just almost anxiety inducing, right? Like, I can go to so many examples of Canon cameras. I remember when Matty Hapoya had just gotten the Canon R5, he put it in his front seat, drove off, and the camera just slid on his seat, hit the lens on the back of his seat. No big lens gone, broken. A friend of mine, Shane from Baby Back Blues, no, In the Blues, but he also has another channel which I believe I've referenced on Cities Go, which is Geeky Nerdy Techie. and he had his new GH6 when it came out, had it on a tripod. Gust of wind took it, you know, flippy screen, busted. And it's such a brand new camera, like the first time they used it had to wait months before the part was even available. So the reason why I went on this soliloquy is because, where are my cameras? Let me use my thought deductioning skills. Oh, how about we check out the camera bag to see if the camera's in it, right? So this is my A6600. Why do I bring this up? Because it has the flip up screen. This is what I love. I prefer this. And the reason why is because everything that's reinforcing it is metal. And from my own experience, I feel that having the like slimmer profile makes it easier if you are, you know, recording yourself to still be able to use it in that manner. And I dropped my A6100 while it was open, you know, and it fell from my front seat to the floor in the front seat when I had to brake hard. And this thing held up. My viewfinder lens, right? Like all of this, it takes a beating, and I think it's a better design overall construction. The A7R4 is the best of both worlds. It has it all, right? Another thing is, as far as photography goes, I prefer this, right? Like if I want to get an angle like this, I prefer to just be able to flip out my screen and be able to just hold it like so, and be able to just like hover over it and be able to see my image, right? Automatically, the flip out screens, you know, you're gonna have it flat, and if I'm holding it like this and I want to see it at an angle, I'm once again putting myself in that vulnerable spot, right? I even feel like, you know, even like this, if somebody were to hit your elbow, give it that little crank on it. And so points of failure are my biggest thing as far as like the negatives. Besides that, these are just phenomenal machines, and I really can't complain, especially, you know, it wasn't too long ago when we didn't have any of this stuff, but we forget fairly quickly. I try not to, right? I try to stay grounded and being like, hey, so the A7R4 has the best of both, or excuse me, let me correct myself. The A7R5, the 5 model, the latest one, has the 60 megapixel sensor, has all the bells and all the bells and whistles as far as features go, right? So it's got like the focus, like all the new focus modes, right? Where you can see the different transitions as far as colors, log footage. It does it all. The 4K, 6K, upscaling. It does everything, and it still gives you the ability to tilt your screen without having to flip it out completely. Understandable because of the viewfinder that it has. It doesn't have the ability to flip up directly like these do on these rangefinder style cameras, but I digress in just to the fact that it has a flip out multifunction, you know, like screen. And the thing about it is that not only is it revolutionary, but it's also built with the same quality as like the A6600. All the hinges are metal, so even though it does flip out, it's a metal flip out hinge, which should be less, you know, anxiety inducing for myself. So my next R camera is going to be exactly that. That's kind of like my next goal, because it is the only thing that it's really missing. As far as me as a creator goes, I do full frame cameras for photography, and then I do APS-C cameras for video. I just feel like that they work better in my experience, right? As far as overheating and different aspects like that, file sizes, and you're not really losing in quality. I definitely, from my experience, can say 8-bit video, right? Compared to 10-bit video, that's a bigger jump from 8 to 10 than going from APS-C to full frame. Kathy says, I'll have mine if you want the footage jump. Well, we'll see. I wasn't thinking about selling it, Kevin. So Kevin's saying, let me know if you're selling the RCP2 and how much you're looking to sell it for. I wasn't thinking about selling it. I was just thinking about like adding onto it, right? And having it. Another thing is that this was also a gift, right? So I tend to have trouble reselling gifts because they have a lot of sentimental value to me, right? So, but if anything, you would be one person that I would sell it to, right? Just because, you know, you fams, like you my boy. So, you know, I would let you know. And if I do decide to go that route, just rest assured you're the first person that will know about it. All right. How long is the drive from Atlanta to you? I would say like about 9 hours. I think straight, like if I were to just go straight and no stops. So I stop every 3 hours with Aiden. So I'm thinking about a couple of stops, but I'm also thinking that there's really no rush. So I might be leaving even earlier, taking the first 3-hour stint to Orlando, hanging out with friends, right? Maybe getting like a lunch, and then start heading back out in the afternoon. And then I will only have a 6-hour drive from like Orlando area to Atlanta, check in and do all those things and go from there. So that's basically what my route I'm thinking as ahead of time. Oh, Sammy, I went on that whole soliloquy and he said he meant Canon EF to Sony E. No, that's not even ever going to be possible. And let me explain it the best way that I can. Okay. Let me go overhead. Nope, this one right over here. This is going to be a good example. We have the Nikon lens, right? And what I have here is an adapter that says Nikon to NEX, right? It says NIK to NEX because this is designed with a flange distance with a DSLR, which SLR is single lens reflex, meaning the area here, right? The area here is where that mirror box would exist in a DSLR camera. But because we have mirrorless cameras, right? Mirrorless cameras don't have flange. They don't have a mirror box, right? So the sensor is there immediately. Canon or Sony lenses are designed to have only this much distance between the last part of the optic or the element themselves and the sensor itself. So if I were to take a gauge and measure it, I would say about maybe 12 millimeters, right? From the face of that sensor to the top part of this flange here on the E-mount, right? That's all the space that you have there. Now, this Nikon lens, right? The glass element ends here, but it was designed to be certain millimeters away from the sensor slash film. That amount of distance is what we find here, right? So to get this lens, right, to focus correctly on what you're trying to have the readout on, right, you would need to create the appropriate distance, almost like a magnifying glass. Yep. Where are we going? There we are. Almost like a magnifying glass, and set it appropriate. So hypothetically, if this weren't here, right, to get the image from this lens to appropriate correctly onto this sensor, it would have to be at a perfect flange distance. If I were to try to butt this up right against it, it would be like you taking something and putting it directly up onto your eyeball, right? Like if you were to take something and bring it right here, there's no possible way that your eye can actually focus on it. There has to be a certain distance, right? And that's what we call the flange distance. Excuse me. That flange distance is now being replaced by this dummy adapter, right? The only thing that this is doing is that it's giving the appropriate millimeters from the flange, right? So if we said hypothetically it was 12 millimeters, right? Now we're adding like another 18 to 20 millimeters. So you can say we're looking closer to 34 millimeters of distance that we needed from this sensor to the end of this lens, and that's what this flange does. This now converts the appropriate distance, and now the back end of this element is at the appropriate and perfect length to this sensor. And now, because they are set up accordingly, this sensor can now read information from this lens. If it were to be millimeters out, it's out of focus. If it's millimeters in, it's out of focus. It has to be exactly at this flange distance to do so. And that's why you will never find an E-mount lens adapter, because the E-mount lenses themselves, to just grab one over here if I could. This distance here would need to hypothetically be this close so that the sensor on an EF camera would be able to read this information correctly. You would have to like reverse it. If you were to try to put this lens at this distance, this sensor would not be able to recognize it, because this lens, right? E-mount lenses are designed to be very close to the sensor, and that is impossible on EF lenses or EF cameras, because they're automatically going to have a mirror box inside of it, pushing this lens all the way out here, thus creating the out of focus mode. That's why you will never find any mirrorless lenses available for the reverse, right? For the older mirrored type cameras, the DSLRs, but you will find the difference of being able to adapt older lenses to this mirrorless sensors, because you're basically just detaching the mirrorless aspect and creating the appropriate distance with the flange. And with that being said, we're past the hour. Maybe I'll be able to clip that out and use that for other content, maybe. But hopefully that puts into context like the differences between mirrorless, so on and so forth, which is the advantages of mirrorless in the first place. You have a mirrorless sensor taking that box, allowing you to bring the lenses closer to the sensor, which thus shortens the distance or the size overall of the cameras. The reason why cameras are able to get smaller is because of the mirrorless technology and shrinking everything as far or as close as possible together. Sammy says, it's a very odd request, but I'm thinking about getting older red cameras and having all the lenses for the Sony, but don't want to get the new Canon lenses. Well, unfortunately, Sammy, that's not going to be a possibility. You won't be able to put the newer lenses. Just the technology is way too advanced for the older systems. Gretchen also has a question. Says, is your old Canon film lens an FD lens mount or an EF mount? It's an EF mount. The FDs I do have, and those are like much older, but no, if I am correct, and I could be wrong, but I do believe that the FD mounts were never digital, right? FD was film and only film. And then the EF mount was created for the digital aspect of Canon cameras. And this was still before they went DSLR. I'm talking digital as far as like being powered by electricity, having focus motors that used electricity, but they were still using film. So if my lore and my memories, suits me correctly, that was the transition. And a lot of people back then were upset, like, oh, we're losing all this like FD glass that we can't transition over to the EF mount, until they realized the benefits of the EF mount. And when the L lenses came out, and you're talking about autofocus, right, and you're getting these images right out of the camera, then they'll be like, okay, yeah, I'm buying it, because it was a lot easier for them to shoot. It says, all this info made me start thinking of hunting, and I found this Metabones Canon FD lens to Canon RF mount. Ooh, nice. But that was like, once again, there will be no digital information, but the Canon cameras do well with that. So that's what I've noticed off of this R10. So that would be a really cool adapter. I do have, oh, but it's not worth it. I was thinking, I was like, I have an FD lens, and it's because I've been doing a bit of cleaning house here. Let me give you the outside shot again. Over here, I have all these lenses going on right now. And from it, I'm going to pull this guy. This is not so much a lens. This is a low budget telescope. Let me see. It is a, what's the focal length? 500 millimeter. But as you can see, it is just, like I said, a glorified telescope. Nothing digital, right? F8 is his biggest aperture. Yep. 35-foot minimal focus distance to infinity. God. It's got a nice element on the front, I'm not gonna lie, especially like for these old FD lenses, right? Let's see. Himunor. I'm not too familiar with that brand. Here, let me show you guys. Himunor. Right? So this is the only one that I have. It's got an adapter for a variety, and the FD is the only one that's like similar. So I've kept it around for that same idea, to see if maybe I can mount it on something digital, right, and get use out of it, but no luck so far. Man, that is so cool. Because look, just bringing back this comment, she's saying that she's got to use her 1974 Canon FD 50mm f1.4 for my film camera. That's super cool, especially like if it's from FD to RF, because that is like skipping the middleman. That's like saying, see you later, EF. Don't even need to speak with you. You understand? Don't need to convert. That is super cool. Sammy says, I use an external monitor with the FX30. It's advised. Yeah, it's the best thing. Got you, brother. Absolutely, thank you. But like I said, you'll be the first person that I think of if I do go that way. Kathy says, I have a couple of my dad's old film Nikon cameras. There's something I could use. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially the lenses, like if you have the distance, right? Or let's say like this is a film lens as well. So I point to it. Let me get to it right here. This lens is that lens right there. That one. The Tamron 28mm f2.8. And you know what? I forgot to switch those things around. This is the A6100 that says it's over here. And this is the A7R2 that's listed over here. But let's not get to it. What I have here is that Tamron, and this is a 28 millimeter, so it's giving me more of a wide view. And once again, because I have it set to manual, I'm gonna give you my pro tip on how I set it manual. Right, I take my microphone and I put it in the spot of where my face would be. So going back to camera 1, this is what this looks like, right? And I go, this is where my face would be hanging out. And then I go to camera 2, and as I head over here, I start messing with the focus. Once I have the Shure logo in focus, I also know that I'm in that focus plane. Then I bring my microphone right back, and that shot is set, and I don't have to worry about it focus hunting or if I'm putting something in front of the camera. Now, if you only have one camera, then of course maybe the autofocus is what's going to be best for you, so that if you want to prop something up, you'll be able to like bring it in front of the camera here and have the camera focus. That's not going to happen. I said it's a manual, so there's no manual, focusing. And what I did was I decided that my only auto-focusing camera is going to be my overhead, so that I can do exactly that. Actually, you know what? I forgot to turn on this light, which definitely brings, a lot more light into it. So this will allow me to get into the details, and that's why I have the Sony ZV-1F over here connected via HDMI, and this is the only one that has autofocus, so that if I go, it goes to there. If I bring something a lot closer, right, depending on how much detail I want to give it, I'll be able to just rock it as close as possible, right? Back end cap for E-mount, and look at how crystal clear that looks. Great. And then I'm able to bring it back here, throw that off to the side, and boom, got my thing set up. So advantages and disadvantages, right? This is almost like going back into the cinematography world where you go autofocus versus manual focus. And for those in the know, you always know manual focus is best, because you know exactly where you're pulling that focus. You know exactly what you want in your shot. You know exactly what you're trying to get out of your productions. So for that reason, you'll be using your focus accordingly. I'm excited because that's one of the things that I'm going to be picking up soon for the FX30, which is my manual focus knob. And I'm going to be having a lot of fun throwing a lot of these vintage lenses, having like an easy ability to adjust the focus while I'm recording. So that's going to be fun. But there's so many static shots when it comes to film and movies, right, that we all forget. Like, you set the focus and then you'll have the actor like walk into focus and then walk out of focus, and the shot never moves, and you're still getting the shot that you want to tell the story that you want. So you're gonna continue there. But yes, Kathy, definitely something that you can use, especially the lenses. The lenses are always going to be useful. And she said, yes, that's right. FD was only film, not digital. Yeah, it didn't even have any like motors or anything. It was just straight film. Okay, Gretchen says, I would love to try that old 500 millimeter on my old film cameras. All right, then I will bring it to camp for sure, because it's like my only FD lens. And I'll make sure that I'll hand it so that you can play around with it. Definitely take your time. Look, maybe you need some Panasonic if you want to, rock that MF life. Micro Four Thirds. There are some advantages to Micro Four Thirds. None that I actually would use. And I'm not saying that I would never use, but that I currently don't use. One of the advantages I would say the two biggest advantages that I would direct anyone into Micro Four Thirds in whichever field that they want is stabilization, right? The sensor is so small. With the digital stabilization and the in-body image stabilization, you get gimbal-like footage out of Micro Four Thirds stabilization cameras, especially the Panny Boys. Now, the other thing is the focus, the crop magnification, right? That everything is 2 times. So if you're into like wildlife birding, right, if you're like into like capturing, fast moving subjects from afar, excuse me. Oh, that just snuck up on me. Excuse me. They just sneak up on you sometimes. Woof. So birding, fast moving subjects, fast burst rate and good stabilization is what I would advise for the Micro Four Thirds. You get that double reach, right? You're gonna get small lenses, so if you're carrying a small like 300 millimeter, you're doubling that amount. You're actually walking around with a 600. And if you have a zoom lens that's within that range, you can get crazy amount of reach with high quality photos with all of those added benefits as far as the stabilization, fast burst rates, and things like that. So another good thing is that some of the companies that run the Micro Four Thirds, they kind of don't hold back on features. They already know that they're limited as far as the sensor goes, so they're even better than Sony, I believe, and they just give you like the whole echelon. They give you the whole house. They're like, we're gonna give you open gate, we're gonna give you 6K, we're gonna give you this, that, blah, and the sensors are so small that they don't even overheat. So those are the main advantages of Micro Four Thirds. Where I'm at right now, I don't see any camera that really leads me to that direction. The closest thing that I get to Micro Four Thirds is my ZV-1F, which I have over here. Okay, so Gretchen says yes, bring Black Beauty there, so I can play. Absolutely, that's already done. Like that has your name written all over it, Gretchen. Absolutely, because I was looking at it, I was like, man, it's a pretty cool lens. It's just as basic as it can get, but 500 millimeters, manual focus, obviously no stabilization, but having the digital cameras take care of all of those things will really make this lens a lot more usable. So, but that's it, guys. With all of this preparation, right, all of the packing, all of the setting up, because that's what I was talking about, prepping for the podcast summit, is that that I'm basically doing all of this stuff. And the one thing is that I don't want to come back to like a dirty house, so it's like load everything up, get everything done, but also leave a clean house, so that when I get back, I don't have to worry about having to do anything, just to kind of relax when I get back home. So that's what I'm going to be setting up right now. I have some stuff to do, but another thing that I do have is UFC 303, and this like International Fight Week in Las Vegas. So tonight there's a huge UFC card which I'm going to indulge and watch after this live stream, while I continue to pack and set things up for my next week's journey. But everyone, as always, thank you for hanging out. We did it. Just went a little bit over, but we're gonna try to rein it in. This was exactly 187 episodes. This is episode 187 of the Camera Junkie live stream without skipping a beat. And I have to thank every single one of you for hanging out here and making this possible, making this the place that I want to be every single week. So take care of yourselves and each other. And if you haven't noticed, we do this every single week, so you make sure to mark your calendars. 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday night for the Camera Junkie live stream. Like I mentioned before, I will be in Atlanta next week, but I'll be doing the live stream from the hotel, and I can't wait to see all of your smiling faces as we do it all over again next week. So take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you next time. Talk to you. I didn't have time to do the cities goal. Forgot to mention that, but that's how busy I've been. See you all next week.